There's an idea taking shape on our planet, an ambition so vast it stretches across every major continent, an alliance that seeks to redraw the maps of power and influence. It calls itself BRICS. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and now in a dramatic expansion, joined by Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and the United Arab Emirates. Together, they represent nearly half of all humanity. Their economic weight, a force that already rivals the established powers of the West. Their stated mission: to build a new multipolar world, to amplify the voice of the global South, and to offer an alternative to a global system they feel was not built for them. It is a grand and compelling narrative, a story of rising powers coming together to claim their place in the 21st century. But when you strip away the speeches from the summits and the handshakes between leaders, and you look at the raw, physical reality of our world, a profound and almost impossible challenge reveals itself. The single greatest obstacle to the BRICS dream isn't a rival power or a political disagreement. It is something far more fundamental. It is the crushing, indifferent, and absolute tyranny of distance. To understand this alliance, you must first understand the immense voids that separate its members. These are not the cozy neighborhood blocks of Europe where nations are stitched together by short highways and shared histories. This is an alliance of strangers, separated by the widest oceans and the most formidable landscapes on Earth. Let's look at the club of the world's 20 largest economies, the G20. If you were to rank the longest possible journeys between their capital cities, you would find the architecture of BRICS defined by extreme separation. The flight from Brasilia to Beijing is the sixth longest of any G20 pairing. It's a colossal 17,000-kilometer gap. From New Delhi to Brasilia is the eighth longest. Pretoria to Beijing, the 10th. It's a club where the members are, quite literally, worlds apart. Now, the only non-BRICS pairing in that top 10 is the lonely expanse between Australia and Canada. Now, picture what this means in practical terms. Container ship chugging from the port of Santos in Brazil to Shanghai in China embarks on a journey of over 20,000 kilometers, a voyage that consumes more than a month. This isn't just a line on a map. It's a barrier of time and money, a constant, grinding friction that works against the easy flow of trade and the weaving of integrated supply chains. The recent expansion, celebrated as a masterstroke of political influence, only amplified this core problem. The distance from Tehran to Brasilia is another 12,000-kilometer chasm. From Addis Ababa to Beijing, another 8,500. The fundamental law of economic gravity states that nearness breeds connection. By its very design, the BRICS alliance is a rebellion against gravity itself. And this battle against distance doesn't end at the coastline, continues, and in many ways deepens within the borders of these nations themselves. 4 of the bloc's members are among the 10 largest countries on the planet. They are not nations. They are continents in their own right, containing vast inland empires of immense remoteness. In the far west of China, in the Xinjiang region, lies a point over 2,600 kilometers from the nearest ocean. Russia's Siberian heart is even more isolated. These are not just empty spaces. They are regions held captive by geography. To reach them, you must cross the highest mountains on Earth, the Himalayas in China and India. You must navigate the dense, impenetrable Amazon in Brazil. You must survive the frozen permafrost of the Siberian tundra. You must contend with the fact that new member Ethiopia is entirely landlocked, a nation on a high-altitude plateau, and that Iran is a fortress of rugged mountain ranges. This internal distance creates deep economic fissures within the countries themselves. It draws a stark line between the globally connected coastal hubs, the Shanghais, the Mumbai, the Sao Paulos, and the vast, struggling hinterlands. The wealth of global trade arrives at the port, but the journey inland is another epic, costly, and often incomplete voyage. This is why a project like China's Belt and Road Initiative exists. It is a multi-trillion-dollar acknowledgement of this very problem, an attempt to blast and pave a new Silk Road through the tyranny of its own geography. For the BRICS dream of shared prosperity to be real, it must find a way not just to connect with its distant partners, but to connect with its own isolated self. Yet, even if you could somehow collapse these physical voids with technology and infrastructure, you would be left with the final, and perhaps highest barrier of all, the chasm of culture. If physical distance makes trade difficult, cultural distance can make it impossible. It is the invisible architecture of trust, of communication, of shared understanding. And the cultural distances within BRICS are among the widest on Earth. Using the pioneering work of social psychologist Geert Hofstede, we have one perspective to find a way how to measure these gaps. His framework looks at how different societies handle everything from power and inequality to individualism and uncertainty. When you calculate the distance based on these metrics, the results are startling. The cultural gap between the United States and Australia is a tiny 10.2. They speak a common language of values. But the gap between China and Brazil? It's a staggering 77.9. The way a Brazilian team builds relationships with warmth, expression, and flexibility can seem chaotic and unprofessional to a Chinese counterpart conditioned by hierarchy, restraint, and meticulous long-term planning. The way a Russian negotiator, from a culture that avoids uncertainty, demands firm rules and guarantees can clash with the more adaptable, entrepreneurial spirit of a Chinese partner. Now, multiply this complexity by 9. Within the ancient tapestry of India, the post-apartheid identity of South Africa, the deeply rooted Islamic traditions of Iran and Egypt, unique Orthodox Christian history of Ethiopia, and the hypermodern globalized dynamism of the UAE, the result is a cultural mosaic of breathtaking diversity. While the West often operates with a cultural shorthand born from a shared history, most defined by imperialism and colonialism, BRICS possesses no such common text. They are attempting to write a new story together, but each member is drawing from an entirely different library of human experience. So, here we stand, before an alliance stretched to the breaking point by geography, fragmented by its own internal distances, and divided by profound cultural chasms. It is easy, then, to be skeptical, to dismiss it as an alliance of convenience, doomed to crumble under the weight of its own contradictions. But what if this perspective is wrong? What if overcoming these monumental divides is not the bloc's greatest weakness, but its defining mission? The leaders of these nations are not blind to these realities. Their strategy appears to be a direct assault on the relevance of distance itself. They began not with a trade pact but with a bank, the New Development Bank, an institution designed to move capital, which fears no distance, to fund the very roads, ports, and power grids needed to conquer physical isolation. They are pushing into the digital realm, payment systems, e-commerce, satellite networks, where the 17,000 kilometers between Beijing and Brasilia can be crossed in an instant. They are learning that their diversity, if harnessed, can be a unique strength. A single one-size-fits-all product will fail in these markets. But a business model that can combine Chinese manufacturing scale, Indian software genius, Brazilian resource wealth, and Emirati financial acumen could create something the world has never seen. The ultimate vision is captured in a simple Latin phrase: discrimina, superanda, pro bono omnium. The divides must be overcome for the good of all. Perhaps the true purpose of BRICS is not simply to challenge the old centers of power, but to prove that a different model of globalization is possible. One that doesn't create a core and a periphery, but a network that actively bridges the gaps and uplifts its most remote members. If they can build a functioning, cooperative bridge between the farthest poles of the Earth, they will have created a blueprint for connecting all the world's forgotten corners. The challenge is immense. The forces of history and geography are relentless, but the wager is clear. It is a bet that humanity's ability to connect can finally triumph over the vast distances that have always defined us. If this improbable alliance succeeds, it will have done more than shift the balance of power. It will have redrawn the very map of human possibility. And don't forget, like the video and subscribe the channel to keep thinking the world how it really is.